All right, ladies and gentlemen. So, like I said in the teacher message video, today what we're going to be talking about is we're going to be talking about the Compromise of 1850. Now, the Compromise of 1850 is really kind of the first cause that is going to lead the United States on that road to the Civil War. So, there are a couple of provisions in the Compromise of 1850 that are really going to kind of divide the country and really kind of force people who didn't really have an opinion on slavery or the spread of it, didn't really care about it wasn't really a big concern to them. It's going to push those people to either support the side of ending the expansion of slavery or allowing slavery to expand. So a couple of those provisions are really going to push people towards one side or the other, and it's really going to lead towards the Civil War, and it's going to contribute to that disagreement and kind of make that issue a more polarizing issue where there's only one way or the other. There is no in between to get people kind of calm and allow it to continue and just allow a compromise position really to continue. It's either there or it's not. You either expand it or you don't. That's what the Compromise of 1850 is going to turn the slavery issue into. So I want to take a look at that today. That's what we're going to talk about today. Before we get to the Compromise of 1850 itself, I need to make sure that I kind of summarize and review with you guys the compromise that had existed 30 years prior to the Compromise of 1850 that had really settled that issue for a little while until the United States gained new land from the Mexican-American War. That's going to reignite that debate over slavery. So the compromise that the United States had reached about the issue of slavery came in the Missouri Compromise. And if you remember, Missouri is admitted to the United States as a slave state. Maine is admitted to the United States as a free state. And slavery is kept south of the 3630 line west of Missouri. So we can see on this map, and it's a little bit tough to see right now. And actually what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll present this real quick just so we can see it. It'll make things a little easier. Then I'll probably go ahead and actually I might keep it this way or I might change it depending. But we can see right here, the yellow state here, that is Missouri. Everything west of this is going to be, and south is going to be a slave state. Everything north of this line and west of Missouri is going to be a free state. So this is the 3630 line right here. And Missouri is the only exception to that rule that everything north of this line is free and everything south of this line is slave. So that's the compromise that the United States came to in 1820. And it lasted until 1850 and until the end of the Mexican-American War. Now, if you remember, this land here, all of this land in the light orange, right in this area here, this is still part of Mexico during the Missouri Compromise. So the compromise that was reached satisfied both the North and the South. And what was going to happen to these territories and everything else might have been something that they could have debated for a later date. But at that particular point in time, the North and the South were both okay with this compromise and accepted this compromise. So prior to the Mexican-American War and all of this land becoming part of the United States, the slavery issue had been settled and it had been figured out for that time. And it actually lasted for about 30 years. However, there are going to be a couple of new things that are going to happen in before 1850 that is going to result in the need for the Compromise of 1850. For example, the United States fights the Mexican-American War, and California, the Utah Territory, the New Mexico Territory, and Texas all become part of the United States. So now we need to decide, and now the United States needs to decide what can be slave, what can be free, what states are going to come in and be slave states, what states are going to come in and be free states. And really, at the end of the day, they have to figure out how to try to keep that balance or do what they can in the House and in the Senate to be able to take and hold on to that balance between free states and slave states. And that's going to be kind of a problem when California is asking to be admitted into the United States as a free state. So if you remember, California is acquired by the United States in 1848 as part of the Mexican-American War. 2 years later, California is applying for statehood. You need a certain population to be able to apply for statehood, over 100,000 people. California is able to do that because in 1848, gold is discovered in California. And by 1849, over 100,000 people have moved to California to try to strike it rich, to find that gold, to become wealthy. And that helps to really kind of make California's population explode to the point by 1850, California can apply to be a state, and they apply to be a free state. Now, for the North, that's great because that is another free state that will vote on Northern issues and support Northern causes and stuff like that. For the South, that's bad because that's a free state that is going to vote against the South. And also, admitting California into the Union and admitting them as a free state is going to throw off that balance to where there is going to be 16 free states and 15 slave states. So at this point in the Senate, the South is going to be overruled every single time, and that's something that they can't have. So they are going to try to put off California and prevent California from joining the United States. However, Henry Clay and Stephen Douglas find a way to come up with a compromise that will make both the North and the South happy. Now, the North is going to make out, kind of end up better off with this compromise, but there are going to be two provisions and two parts of this compromise that the South are really going to like, and it is going to lead the South to agree to the Compromise of 1850. Okay? So, taking a look at what the Compromise of 1850 said. Now, I'm going to have to run through this a little bit, and let me move myself real quick so you guys can see. We're going to run through this a little bit, and then we're going to kind of break it down and try to make it make a little more sense. So the Compromise of 1850 had 5 provisions, had 5 things, 5 parts to it. California is admitted as a free state. Popular sovereignty is going to determine whether a state was a slave state or a free state in all other Western territories. So all parts of the Mexican cession. So that is going to effectively do away with completely and totally the Compromise of 1850. The 3630 line is no longer the deciding line of whether a state is going to be free or slave. Now it is going to be popular sovereignty, where people are going to get their chance to vote on whether they want slavery or don't want slavery. Okay, so that's part of that. That's the second provision. And remember that provision because that one is very important. Texas is going to give up territorial claims west of the Rio Grande in return for $10 million. Washington, D.C. is going to abolish the slave trade, but not slavery. It's not going to get rid of slavery altogether. And last but not least, and this is the other important one, there is going to be a new and stronger fugitive slave law, which required Northerners to return runaway slaves to Southern plantation owners. Now, let's break this down a little bit real quick. The provision of California being admitted to the Union as a free state, Texas giving up territorial claims west of the Rio Grande in return for $10 million. Washington, D.C. abolishing the slave trade, but not slavery. Those things are really going to kind of benefit the North. Texas, it's a loose benefit. It really isn't much of one. It makes the possibility that if popular sovereignty is going to be the way that things are decided, that you could have a state in the South west of Texas that is going to take and be a free state rather than a slave state. And you already have California to the west that is going to be a free state. So if you can kind of, to Northerners, if you can kind of stop the movement of slavery in Texas and prevent it from going any farther west, you might be able and you might have a chance to end slavery altogether. So they're okay with that Texas provision. They're also okay with Washington, D.C. abolishing the slave trade. You can no longer sell slaves in Washington, D.C. in the capital, but you can still have slavery. So that was kind of a middle of the road provision for the North and the South. California being admitted to the Union as a free state is all favoring the North. That completely and totally favors the North. There's no in between on that one. Now, this popular sovereignty provision, this more favors the South than it does the North, because this popular sovereignty provision is going to take and allow states, as we know, to kind of decide what their fate is, whether it's going to be free or slave. If the Missouri Compromise line had stayed in place, there would have been no way that the South would have had more states than the North by the time everything was all said and done. So this popular sovereignty position is definitely going to favor the South more than the North, because it gives them an opportunity to have more slave states than they would have had the Missouri Compromise not been gotten rid of by that provision. And the other provision of this compromise, the other part of this compromise that really takes and favors the South, is this new, stronger fugitive slave law. So this law is now going to require any Northerners that find runaway slaves in the North to return them to the South. And there's going to be a penalty and prison time for anyone that does not do that. Prior to the Compromise of 1850, many runaway slaves in the Underground Railroad took runaway slaves to the northern states. Once they got to the northern states, they were okay. They still had to worry about some bounty hunters that would come in and try to take them back to the South. But for the most part, courts in the North didn't really enforce the return of slaves once those runaway slaves made it to the North. With this new and stronger fugitive slave law, they now have to, and they have no choice. The law is on the books. They have to allow bounty hunters to take runaway slaves back. And that is going to be something that really favors the South and really angers the North. So even though this was really a treaty that favored the North, we have California, we have Texas giving up territorial claims, and Washington, D.C. abolishing the slave trade. Those are three things that really favor the North, where the South only gets popular sovereignty and a stronger fugitive slave law. So this Compromise of 1850 really favors the North. But those two things that the South got made them feel like they would have a chance to expand slavery into the West and keep slavery going so that they could prevent the North from really ending slavery altogether and prevent the North from stopping slavery and ultimately ending the practice of slavery. It's something that the South wanted to hold on to. Now, one more thing. Two of these provisions are going to contribute to other causes of the Civil War that are going to lead to the Civil War that we're going to learn about. Popular sovereignty, letter B, is going to lead to the Kansas-Nebraska crisis that we are going to learn about on Friday. This is going to be a very violent outburst over slavery, and popular sovereignty is going to lead directly to it. So that is something that we need to keep in mind. The other provision that we need to keep in mind, and the other part of this that we need to keep in mind, is that new, stronger fugitive slave law. Many of the Northerners are going to hate that law, and that's going to make them want to stop the practice of slavery and end slavery. Popular sovereignty is going to make both sides, those that want to expand slavery and those that want to end slavery, dig in a lot harder and really kind of believe what they believe in and kind of hold on to their beliefs a lot more strongly. So the popular sovereignty part of this compromise and the fugitive slave law part of this compromise are the two most important parts of this compromise, because those two things are really going to push people in the North to go from not worrying about slavery and just accepting that that's what the South is, to really kind of trying to end slavery, because they're going to see how polarizing and how barbaric that system can be. So that is the Compromise of 1850, and this is going to really set up the conditions for that disagreement and between keeping slavery and getting rid of it, and then eventually lead to the Civil War and the North and the South fighting over that issue. So that really sums up what I wanted to talk about today, guys. If you have any questions, please make sure you reach out to me. Please make sure you email me during my office hours. And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, we'll just get out of here real quick. Again, if you do have any questions, guys, please reach out to me. Please email me, and I will make sure that I get back to you as quickly as I can. Make sure you complete the check for learning so you can get at least a 2 on this lesson. With that said, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will catch you guys tomorrow for the review lesson on abolition. Please make sure you tune in so you can get the answers for the abolition workbook packet. Have a great day, guys.